Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Unquestionably Raw podcast. Today, we're previewing the Phoenix Suns and their upcoming season. With us is a special guest today. We've got Tim Tompkins of the Drive and Dish podcast. Thanks, Tim, for coming on with us.
Mr. Pete, Mr. Matt, thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
Absolutely.
It's an honor to have you. We're trying to get to where you guys are, so definitely want to talk.
Thank you.
Some Phoenix Suns.
Just podcast for about 3 years straight without missing an episode, and you'll be there.
Yeah, hope so. Rolling into the first question. So, looking at the Suns and their depth chart, Earl Watson already came out. He announced that the starting lineup is going to be Eric Bledsoe at the point guard spot, Devin Booker at the shooting guard spot, T.J. Warren playing the small forward, Jared Dudley at the power forward, and Tyson Chandler at center. What do you look for each of these guys as far as contributions this season?
Well, starting with T.J. Warren starting at the small forward spot, a lot of that has to do with the back injury that P.J. Tucker suffered. And just to go a little bit into his back injury, it was essentially a pinched nerve. And so it wasn't that his back was in pain. That pinched nerve due to the spine was basically giving him a lot of leg pain. I think that this starting small forward spot is going to be T.J. Warren's to lose. That being said, there's a lot of value in having him in the starting lineup. The problem with having P.J. Tucker come off the bench is that what does P.J. Tucker really give you off the bench as far as production? I mean, he's a 9-point-a-game scorer. He's more of a defensive stopper. He sets good screens. He sets the tone, and you don't really need that off your bench unit as much as you need scoring off your bench unit. So I'm not really sure that T.J. Warren will remain in that starting role. That also being said is that P.J. Tucker's in a contract year this year. There's a really good chance that coming up to the trade deadline, the Suns ship him away. There's a lot of teams that are looking for a wing stopper like P.J. Tucker. Going on with Eric Bledsoe, I think he's missed about 39% of his games since he started really in the league. So just for Eric Bledsoe, you're looking for a healthy Devin Booker. You look at Devin Booker last year, and he finished, I think it was a negative 2.4 defensive box plus minus, which is absolutely atrocious. And I know everyone's in love with Devin Booker's shooting and his scoring and really his passing, but for Devin Booker to be the next Klay Thompson, as people like to say, he really has to work on his defensive abilities. Same with T.J. Warren, too. Looking at Jared Dudley, while he's a starter, he has Marquise Chris backing him up. There are other power forwards that need some real minutes. So for Jared Dudley, him being in the starting unit, I think he needs to show that veteran presence, but he's only going to be playing about 20 minutes a game. Same with Tyson Chandler. He's got Alex Len backing him up. He's the starting center, but Alex Len will most likely be playing larger minutes through the course of the season.
Okay. Matt, you got any thoughts on the starting five?
Yeah, I think at some point, I would not be surprised if at some point this year, depending how the season's going, if they're kind of out of it, the playoff hunt, I wonder if we will see Chris in there at the power forward starting, because he's looked pretty, he's had he's looked pretty decent in the preseason so far. I know it's just preseason, but he brings a lot of athleticism, can shoot the basketball, rebound. So, I mean, hopefully he'll stay out of foul trouble, because we know in college, the guy couldn't stay on the floor with his fouls. Same thing with Bledsoe, stay healthy. He's, probably, their best defender, just really good player. And they've really missed him. With Booker, I totally agree. And Pete, I love Devin Booker. I think he's underrated with his playmaking ability, but he does have to improve defensively. The good thing is he does not turn 20 until I believe October 30th. So he can still learn and he can get there. Center, yeah, I agree. Tyson Chandler probably won't play that many minutes. Len will get the bulk of those minutes. And with T.J. Warren defensively, got to improve. He's a fantastic scorer. And I think he's got to also work on hitting a consistent three-point shot. That would really help his game. And if they do bring him off the bench, with him and Brandon Knight, do you think that might cause some problems? Them both, being big-time scorers.
I mean, I think it could. I mean, T.J. Warren obviously is in there for his offense, not for his defense. And I think, like Tim said, only because of the injury is TJ kind of in that starting lineup at the small forward spot. It doesn't make sense to have another scorer when you already have Booker and Bledsoe right there on the wings. You need a defender on the perimeter, especially with Devin Booker being such a bad defender currently, and then Eric Bledsoe, with his injuries. So it'll be a different kind of look to have Warren in there, at the small forward spot. But you're right. He's got to work on that three-point shot. And then with Alex Len, I look for him to take the starting spot over before midseason, just because Tyson Chandler only played 22, 23 minutes a game last season at that center spot. And with Alex Len, he's the future, obviously, over Tyson Chandler, who's more of a veteran, capable defender now, but not what he was as far as a rebounder defender back like when he played for Dallas and things like that. So, Tim, moving into the second unit, we kind of touched on.
Hold on. Can I chime in real quick on the TJ Warren thing? With the TJ Warren needing to improve his 3-point shooting, he's actually the Suns' best 3-point shooter. A small sample size last season, but he was shooting 40% from behind the arc. So, I think about 60% of those were corner threes. So it did show that last season he was able to improve on that 3-point percentage. And I think that Matt made a great point that Marquise Chris staying out of foul trouble. He's already fouled out of 2 preseason games so far. And as far as the center spot, there's actually been some talk about Marquise Chris playing center minutes in a small ball lineup. So I think that'll be an interesting thing to look at moving forward as well.
Yeah, he played center, I believe, last game and did really well at that center spot as a small ball center. So that can
he can stretch the floor with his ability to shoot.
So going into the second unit, we kind of talked about PJ Tucker already, a little bit about Alex Len, but looking at guys like Leandro Barbosa, you've got Brandon Knight, who I want to talk about a little bit, taking that 6-man role. Archie Goodwin might be sprinkled in there along with John Jenkins and Al Williams in small sample size minutes. And we'll get to Dražen Bender and Tyler Ulis in a minute. But I just want to talk about some of those bench guys, kind of where you see them fitting, Tim. Barbosa, Archie Goodwin, and what you see out of Brandon Knight.
As far as Archie Goodwin goes, on our podcast, we did a Phoenix Suns preview with Dave King of Brightside the Sun about a month ago, and really delved deep into Archie Goodwin. And Archie Goodwin he's a good player, but the problem with Archie is he hasn't improved in any one area really since he came into the league 3 years ago. And it seems now, and especially when the Suns initially drafted Devin Booker, that he was already sort of an afterthought. So looking at what is Archie going to do this season to make him not so much of an afterthought? I don't really know that there is much. I think at this point Archie is playing for trade bait, and he's playing to move himself into a situation where a team can actually play him and wants to play him. As far as Brandon Knight goes, as you guys were talking about earlier on the podcast, he's already been given that 6-man role, and if he can really embrace that and kind of understand that it's not so much of a downgrade as much as an opportunity. Jamal Crawford, how important is he for someone like the Clippers? And if he can really run that second unit, we've seen some great alley-oops and production out of Brandon Knight with Marquise Chris in some of these preseason games so far. He's got to cut down the turnovers. I think his turnover to assist rate is 2.5 to 2.3, which is completely unacceptable. And as far as Barbosa goes, I think that Barbosa is a really good complementary wing to have next to Brandon Knight. You can play some strong side, weak side offense. You can run pick and pop with Barbosa, and you can do a little bit of slashing, which is something not a lot of Suns players can do. I really think the Suns only have 2 slashers right now, and that's Barbosa and TJ Warren. So hopefully we can see that develop from some of the other players as well.
Okay, Matt, what's your thoughts on Brandon Knight and some of the other kind of I
agree with Tim. If Brandon Knight really embraces this role and doesn't see it as a downgrade, because I think this is going to give him – he's going to probably still play 28, 30 minutes a game, I would imagine, and it's actually going to give him an opportunity to score even more, and we know that's what he does best. So if he can embrace that, I mean, he'll be one of those guys who's in the running for 6th man of the year. I don't know how much we'll see of Archie Goodwin. He probably is trade bait. What are they going to do with John Jenkins? Because this was a guy coming out of college who was compared to like J.J. Redick. Like he just hasn't. I know he was hurt in Atlanta, but he just really hasn't seemed. He just doesn't seem to be that shooter they thought he was.
Very inconsistent.
Dude's a practice player.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I like Barbosa championship experience. He's been with the Suns before, with Nash and Stoudemire and all those guys. So he'll be a really good veteran presence in that backup unit. And I really do like Marcus Chris. Like I said earlier, I think he's going to be pushing for starters minutes and eventually supplant Jared Dudley. And I think Dudley could be fine off the bench. Good veteran, can shoot the ball, is going to defend. He'll do all the things that they ask him to do.
Absolutely.
And it seems like Jared Dudley took a retirement role with the Suns, knowing exactly what he was going into. And they didn't hurt their future by signing him. They signed him to a 2-year deal. I believe it was, maybe it was 3. But yeah, I don't think Jared Dudley would have any problem with coming off the bench and letting some of those young. I think it's interesting though how good Marquise Chris looks in comparison to Dragan Bender.
Yes.
Dragan Bender was touted as the 3rd best player in the draft, and he probably is. He has all of those. He has all the knowledge. And wingspan and physical abilities to really be a good NBA player. But I don't know about you guys, but it's really surprised me how much more NBA ready Marquise Chris looks over Dragan Bender.
Yeah, Bender's looked like a deer in the headlights.
Absolutely.
Right.
Matt and I kind of talked about it after our show yesterday, and we were talking about Bender and even when he played over in Europe, I mean, obviously Europe's a little bit different, so you're not playing as many minutes, but he was kind of eased into action. Yes, he looked good on some highlights, but there was a lot of times where he kind of just blended into the game. His primary problem for me coming out when I was kind of scouting the draft and things like that is his ability to finish at the rim for his size. He settled a lot for floaters in the lane for being a big man. That's more of a guard skill instead of taking it right to the rim and kind of being forceful. He settles a lot for three-point shots, as you can see in the summer league and even currently shooting from the outside. Now, I think that's going to be his forte, being able to use speed off the dribble, athleticism, but right now it's just not there. And Marquise Chris is worlds, better than Dragan Bender is, currently. So I think Bender is really, the third guy, on the depth chart at the power forward spot, and Chris is going to get considerable minutes off the bench whenever, if Dudley gets in foul trouble or if he's hurt, Chris is going to step in, not Dragan Bender. Tim, what do you think of Tyler Ulis so far?
Ulis has looked great. He's kind of an Isaiah Thomas throwback. I really do see Ulis getting some minutes. I don't really see them putting him down in the D League very much. Small point guards in the D League really get beat up. A lot of the reason they signed Ulis was basically because he's Devin Booker's best friend, Devin Booker being the face of the franchise, most likely moving forward. But I mean, he's been rather impressive. He's not shooting at the best clip, but he's been a surprise out of the second round. And I think there's going to be some games where he doesn't play at all. I think there's going to be some games where he plays 15, 20 minutes. It's going to be a situation-by-situation thing when it comes to Ulis. But surprising to me is that I actually think that second-round pick is going to be playing real minutes in the NBA in his rookie season.
Yes. Tim, do you see him, this year, because he has, he's a guy who's probably is going to be pretty good. You think they'll use him a lot with Brandon Knight in the backcourt in that second unit?
I don't think they can. I mean, you can't. Yeah, how big is Brandon Knight? He's 6'3", 6'3". Yeah, that's a little guy in the NBA. You put him back there with Ulis, and that is a revolving door when it comes to defense. I don't think that they can do that. Sprinkle in some TJ Warren and see how many points the opponents can score.
And we know Brandon Knight's not known for his defense.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. They'll actually go downward from 28th in defense last season to 30th if they had them
That's hard to do.
Yeah, it's hey, it gives hope for my 76ers. They might move up in the defensive rankings at that point.
Hey, they should. They got Embiid protecting that rim. They should move up.
Yeah, we'll see.
You saw him move his feet against. You saw him move his feet. Yeah, you saw him move his feet against John Wall the other day. Kept him in front.
We'll see.
Did. Him and his 12 minutes a game. I got a lot of pride for you, you Sixers fans, man. You've had a tough few years. I mean, I think it's been hard being a Suns fan. But let me ask you a question, Pete. Not to get off the Suns, but the Sixers have had this we'll take the best player available mentality, and now you've ended up with like 5 centers. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about always taking the best player?
I think, to be honest, you've got to go with situational fit sometimes over, best player, just for the fact that you have a lot of guys that kind of do the same thing. Like Noel's able to defend the rim. So can Embiid. Offensively, Okafor, very, good on the offensive and not much of a rebounder, but so is Embiid. So you got copycat players there. Kind of what they brought in for the offseason and Jared Bayless, not a point guard. You need somebody that can fit, not trying to take anything away from Jared Bayless, but, looking at Ben Simmons right now as a point guard would have been crazy to throw him right in there. And Dario Saric kind of does some of the same playmaking ability. So these copycat players don't really kind of, as you can see, weed out the roster very well. They need shooters, which they don't have. I could talk all day on the Sixers.
Is not a shooter either.
Yeah, no. And Stauskas is one of my favorite guys coming out, and he's looked atrocious.
He's a bum.
And he's going to be right there with Jimmer Fredette.
He's a bum.
So,
hey, Fredette's playing really well in China right now.
Hey, so does Yi Jianlan. Somehow he made a roster spot again.
Yes.
Going back to the Suns, I want to talk a little bit about Earl Watson specifically. So he took over the team last season. They were 22nd in offense at 110.9 points per game, 28th in defense, giving up 100.9 points per game and giving up 107.5 points per game. He only won 9 games as coach. Huh?
Ideal.
Yeah.
It's a good point differential that you always want to go into having. It's great.
Exactly. What do you look for specifically, Tim, as he hopes to build upon the 23 wins that they got last season?
I knew you guys were going to ask me this question. I saw it ahead of time. Like I mentioned, I had Dave King on about a month back, and we really delved into Earl Watson. And I mean, you look at the Suns last year where pretty much their entire starting unit was out. They were playing the Twin Towers lineup, which shouldn't have ever been a thing. They were third in pace, but they weren't scoring at all, a lot like the Kings. So everyone says the faster pace is always better. It's not. Mm-hmm. But as far as what system he plays, what I don't know. I don't really think anyone knows, because what do you take away from it? It's like trying to judge the Grizzlies last year at the end of the year. What can you even take away from that situation? He says he wants, to play with a lot of defense first mentality, but we saw them against the Jazz where nobody was stopping anybody from scoring. So I don't know if that's actually accurate. I don't know. I do know that they're tracking high fives. So that's a thing.
Yes.
Wow. Analytics is taking a little bit too far now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will tell you this. Back when I used to go watch the Suns in person when Steve Nash played for him, one thing that the TV didn't catch was that after one of the Suns players made a basket, Steve Nash was giving that player a high five every single time down the court. You look at the Suns last year, and you have Tyson Chandler on the bench, really pumping up his teammates and that kind of thing. So there is value in it. Mm-hmm. But I hadn't heard about teams tracking high fives yet.
Yeah, exactly. Matt, do you what are you looking for Earl Watson to kind of implement, maybe to get them over the 23-game hump?
I think they should be able to get over 23 wins if they can stay healthy. I mean, you look at the, I say to each one of these on the team, 28th in, 28th in offensive rating, I believe 25th in defensive rating. And that's with all those guys, Tyson Chandler, rim protector, Eric Bledsoe, good defender out there on the perimeter. Having those guys back should help the defense. You bring in a guy like Jared Dudley, he's going to defend for you. So I think that they hopefully Devin Booker will be better defensively. I would assume he will be slightly better. So maybe he'll be bad instead of god awful. So then
I think he was rated worst among all guards last year as far as defensive box plus minus.
Yeah.
Negative 2.4.
Yeah, in his defense, he was 19 all year playing against grown men. Right. So I think he should be able to improve on that. Just being around the NBA game, and he's going to adjust. I'm not saying he's ever going to be Klay Thompson defensively, but he should be able to improve. So I think those things will get better. So I think all that will add on to more wins as long as they stay healthy. But that's the thing. Bledsoe's hurt every year now almost. Tyson Chandler's up there in age. Can he stay healthy? So I think that's going to be big with this team is going to be the health. If they're beat up again, you're not going to get much out of Chris defensively this year probably. Hell, he's going to foul people. Bender, is he even going to see the floor? And if they're hurt and he has to, he's not going to be able to guard anybody. So I think if they stay healthy, they will be better.
Looking at Devin Booker, I use J.J. Redick as a comparison because we all know J.J. Redick could not defend a chair coming out of Duke. And he was able to get better defensively. It took him about 4 years to get there, but I think Devin Booker has a lot more length, wingspan, of course, and is a lot quicker defensively. So I think as he gains a little bit, age and experience, I think he'll be able to help. Maybe not an elite defender, but
But here's the thing, Pete. Remember with Redick though, a lot of that was Stan Van Gundy. He really taught JJ how to play the NBA game.
Well, you got Earl Watson there. Earl Watson was a defender in his playing days too. So, if you're going to learn from somebody, your head coach is somebody you definitely want to be there, or have to be there for you. And then not to take anything away from a guy like Eric Bledsoe, but he's got to stay healthy because Brandon Knight's going to be right there to take minutes. And can easily slide into that spot. But imagine if you got Brandon Knight at the point guard and Devin Booker at the shooting guard, it's not going to be good defensively. So Earl Watson's going to have to come up with really good offensive schemes to kind of get that team. You don't necessarily have to play run and gun up the floor because I think that's going to be bad for their youth in a sense because or bad for the veterans in a sense, good for their youth because you've got guys like Tyson Chandler get a little bit older. You don't want him running up and down, playing at a breakneck pace. But at the same time, I think a little bit upper tempo would be good for some of the younger guys and be able to score points. The question is going to be what happens on that defensive end in order to get them past the 23-game wins of last season. Tim, going back to you, looking at specifically, I know we talked about Devin Booker already. A little bit about T.J. Warren, but I want to talk about Alex Len because all three guys are vital pieces of the team this season. Of course, the development of Chris and Bender is there. What does Alex Len specifically have to do to take his game to the next level? And let's just briefly touch on what could Devin Booker do to kind of get to an elite shooting guard status, maybe even in the top 10 of shooting guards in the league. And then looking at T.J. Warren, what would he specifically have to do in order to fend off P.J. Tucker once he comes back from injury?
Well, I think that Matt brought this up earlier when it comes to Devin Booker, and one thing that a lot of people were surprised about was Devin Booker's playmaking abilities. So we've spent enough time touching upon his defense that obviously needs to improve. But in order to get into that top 10, if he can really improve upon those playmaking abilities and really be a secondary ball handler out there on the floor, I think that in no time Devin Booker will be an all-star within the next couple of years. You look at Alex Len, and Alex Len last year was shooting 42%. Now, a lot of that had to do that he was being played out of position. He was being played at the power forward role instead of the center role. A lot of his shots coming away from the basket. If you look at Alex Len within 2 feet of the basket, he's finishing at about 57%, which is great. Once it gets past 2 feet, though, that's when those percentages really start to drop. Anywhere from like 3 to 15 feet, it can go as low as 15%. So for as much as the Suns have tried to get Alex Len to be a pick and pop type center, which it hasn't worked, it's a little bit surprising because when you actually look at Alex Len's shot, he has a good looking release. He has a good looking shot. It's right at the top right there, right where it needs to be, and it's consistent. The shots just aren't falling. But this is a contract here for Alex Len. In order for him to be a $15 million a year center as opposed to a $10 million a year center, he needs to get that shooting percentage above 42%. There are guards that aren't happy with 42% shooting.
Absolutely. Matt, any thoughts on Alex Lynn?
Yeah, I got to echo what he said about Alex Lynn and his shooting. He does. He shoots a good ball. So I wonder if some of that is his confidence, kind of like you look at guys like DeAndre Jordan at the foul line. He doesn't shoot a bad ball. He just doesn't ever go in, and you hope they can prove. But I think a good example of maybe he can, you look at Rudy Gobert, who's shooting about 80% foul shots in the preseason. So maybe you get a little confidence that, he can hit 45% of his medium-range shots. And then TJ Warren, I think just get better defensively. Continue, like Tim said, having the higher percentage of threes last year on the team. Even, being a small sample size, can he continue to be consistent, and be able to knock them down consistently and keep that percentage up there? Because that will help out tremendously, especially with the way he attacks the rim. Like, that guy just makes some crazy shots. I like when he got drafted and I saw and just watching that first year in Summer League, I was surprised at his shot-making ability. So I think, being a consistent three-point shooter and continuing it's really going to help his game.
Absolutely. Good point, fellas. So Tim, I don't really have any other thoughts than you've guys kind of covered. Tim, looking at three keys that you think may make or break the Suns this year. It could be individual players or it could be the team as a whole.
Health. I think the majority of these teams, even if you look at the Jazz last year not making the playoffs, how much of that had to do with Rudy Gobert going down at the beginning of the season? This is essentially the same team minus Markieff Morris that won 48 games a couple of seasons ago. If they are healthy, they're going to be successful. But whether or not you consider success them making the 8th seed and getting bounced out in the first round against the Warriors, or success them letting their younger players develop and they can go and get the 3rd pick in what will become a loaded draft. I really think seeing progression from Lynn, I want to see Lynn really improve those percentages. I also want to see him get that block rate back up. I mean, he was at about 6% just a season ago, and then that dropped down to a little bit over 2%. And then the rest is, can Brandon Knight, to Matt's point, really embrace the 6-man role, or are we going to have another Goran Dragic situation?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Matt, what are some keys for you?
One, I'm not going to touch on health because I think that's obvious. So I'm just going to give 2. I think one, Devin Booker, improving on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, watching in the preseason Summer League, he looks fantastic on the offensive end. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. But I think him improving on defense is going to be huge because he is the face of the franchise. He's the guy everyone's going to look at. So if they see him defending and improving, you hope that trickles down to the rest of the guys. We don't want James Harden all over again.
Right.
We don't want that. Yes, we do not want that. And then I think the other one is just defense and offense, improving on those ratings. And like Tim said, they won 48 ball games, and this is being the same team. And then you add a guy like Marcus Chris, you add Jared Dudley and guys like that to this group, and they can be pretty good. Like, I think they're going to, if they stay healthy, I think they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think Vegas put them at like 27.5 games. That's a ridiculously low number. They're winning more than that.
I totally agree.
I bet my car on it. How about this? I bet my car payment on it.
There you go.
Yes.
Outside of the points that you guys covered, I'd look at Earl Watson just as far as just experience as a coach, making sure he's clear about roles. As the season goes, when he faces adversity, being able to lead that team by example. We all know as a point guard when he played, Seattle, he was more of a bench guy, but he was always that locker room kind of voice that was able to kind of pull guys together. That's how he got into coaching kind of in the first place. And with Earl, I want to see him kind of develop Devin Booker on both sides of the ball. Make sure you're in Brandon Knight's ear and say, look, I know you can score points, but you're going to also have to distribute on the second unit as well. And then, of course, with the rookies and Chris and Bender, don't put unrealistic expectations. Take it as it comes, and really, stay in their ear and, stay positive, but give constructive feedback. That's going to be the only key for me. So now we kind of –
To your point, Pete, about the assists in that second unit with Brandon Knight, I believe the Suns were 28th in assists last year. I'm looking at what they are in the preseason so far, and obviously it's a limited sample size, but they are ranking 32nd.
Wow. Looking at we kind of, I guess, teetered on the line just a little bit. Looking at the expectations, it's to compete in the West, of course, like every other team. They have to get better than the 23 wins last season. Tim, as you just mentioned, Vegas has them at 27.5. Where do you see them finishing in the conference?
This completely depends on whether or not the Suns want to develop that young talent and really work on that, or if they want to roll out their veteran players between Jared Dudley and obviously we're going to get a whole lot of Eric Bledsoe and a whole lot of Brandon Knight and Tyson Chandler, and they want to go and they want to win 33 games. So that it depends on where the Suns go. I think Suns fans should want the Suns to embrace one more year of this rebuild. There's no point in them getting the 8th seed and being knocked out by the Warriors in the first round.
Absolutely. Matt, what's your thoughts on
I think this team can be pretty good. I actually think they can win. If I think there'll probably be injuries sprinkled in here and there. I don't think it'll be as bad as last year. I'm going to go with that assumption. So I think this team could win, 34, 35 games. I think they'll be pretty competitive the first half of the season. And then, once they realize, well, this isn't, we're not going to make the playoffs, and then you'll start seeing the young guys get more minutes. And so they'll finish, I think they'll finish 11th in the West. I think they're better than Sacramento. They're better than the Lakers.
Well, at least they got a point guard.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. I look at Phoenix. They won 23 games last season. They're going to improve. You look at a team last season that was injury prone, like, of course, the Pelicans had injuries. Winning 30 games last year. That's right about, the bottom floor of where the Suns should be. I think it's 30 games. I think they win between 30 and 34, 35 games. They can definitely be right there in that 11 range. I don't really see them higher than that, even on if everything goes right. Because Tim is, like you said, they don't want to be the 8th seed. That they're not getting anything out of getting knocked out by the Warriors other than broken ego, so to speak. And I think developing the guys in Bender and Chris, TJ Warren, Devin Booker, really, really working on that this season is going to be the key, and make that push for the 6 or 7 spot next season. I think that's really what they need to do. Just listen to your veterans like Jared Dudley. If PJ Tucker's there the whole season, great. And, of course, Tyson Chandler's, veteran voice as well. So that takes us into the last question of the podcast. Tim, what do you have as far as a bold prediction for the Suns this season?
I think that the bold prediction of the Suns is they're going to end up finishing 9th, and they're going to go over to your house, Pete, and play that really impressive video game collection that you got behind you, because holy hell, man.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a movie guy, and obviously video games and stuff like that.
It's like a movie store right behind you. No, in all seriousness, I would not be shocked if the Suns were able to win 42, 43 games and get into the 7th or the 8th seed. I also would be equally as unshocked as if they were the 13th, quote unquote, the best team over in the West. So, bold predictions, they make the playoffs. I think realistically we should all be hoping that they just aren't 9th.
Okay. Matt, what do you have for
even just to add on that real quick, even finishing just out of the playoffs, hell, with as deep as this draft is, if you get the 13th or 14th pick, you can get a really good player. So
yeah, it's just the worst spot ever to be.
Yeah. And they're not going to be the worst team. So, and hell, you could still get the number 1 pick if you win the lottery. So finish 9th, improve, everybody's happy, and get the number 1 pick in the lottery.
Hey man, the Cavs did it.
Exactly. The Bulls did it. The Magic have done it. It can happen. But for my prediction, I'm going to keep it with Devin Booker. 25-5 for Booker this year.
Ooh, 20. He's got to get that steal rate up, though. The guy's he's stealing less than one steal a game. That's unacceptable for a guard. He's got to get that steal rate up.
1.2 steals this year.
1.2 steals. All right.
1.2 steals.
Then he's an all-star. 25-5 and 1.2. He's an all-star.
See, I think he can make an all. I think if he's doing that and they're I think they'll be right there within that 8 seed come all-star. He might make it then if he's got those numbers.
That's possible. I do think Eric Bledsoe would have a higher chance of getting in, but I mean the West. I mean, you're looking at the all-star, trying to get a guard into the all-star game in the West, and it's just nearly impossible.
Yeah, it's the worst. It's where like sometimes you just wish that some of your some of the guys that are really good, like a Devin Booker in 2 years, you hope other guys kind of lose that momentum and he can steal a spot because it's tough. There's a lot of deserving guys, especially in the West. It's not really a bold prediction. I'm going to throw the first one out there. Brandon Knight, 6th man of the year.
Okay.
My, I guess, bold prediction, I don't really know how bold it is. 35 games started for Marquise Chris by the end of the year.
Nice.
All right, to piggyback off of your Brandon Knight 6th man of the year, the 6th man award of the year always goes to the guard who comes off the bench and chucks the most shots. That could absolutely be Brandon Knight.
Absolutely.
Yes.
He's going to be right there neck and neck with Jamal Crawford, and I think Crawford.
You can be on the worst team in the NBA, but if you average 18 points a game off the bench, you can be 6th man.
As long as you're a guard and your field goal percentage is below 45%, that award is yours.
Yes.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our season preview of the Phoenix Suns. Tim, thank you so much again for coming on with us. It's been a pleasure and definitely fun for sure.
No, Pete, Matt, I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Anytime you want to talk, I'm always available.
Absolutely. Yes. So, Tim, do me a favor for our listener, the people watching, and then the listeners that are going to listen to the audio on iTunes. I'll let everybody know kind of where they can find you. Highlight, of course, some of your work as well.
Sure. Well, we've been doing the Drive Dish podcast for about 3 years now. With my co-host Kevin Rayfuse and Justin Kuzart. Both are Sixers fans, so we talk a lot of Sixers. We talk a lot of Suns. We're available on any platform that you have for your podcast, whether that's Android or Apple. Smart this, smart that. At the end of the day, just go to driveanddishpodcast.com. All the information's on there, as well as links to old episodes. You can get in contact with us there, all our social media, our Facebook, our Instagram, our Twitter, all that garbage. If you want to hit us up, driveanddishpodcast.com.
Absolutely. Great. And if anybody wants to, of course, listen to this replay, you can go to iTunes, click subscribe, Unquestionably Raw podcast, give us a review, and then also go to our YouTube page. You can subscribe to that page as well. You can find all our season previews that we've done so far, plus this one that you're watching or listening to. And then, of course, like the videos and leave us a comment or two as well. So want to wrap that up and
real quick, Pete, I have to do this like I did yesterday. My plug again today. Today we're going with Gatorade Propel Berry flavor. So people at Gatorade.
There you go.
Sponsor the podcast.
Yes. Absolutely. I've reached out to both Propel and Gatorade, so if they want to send us some free water and sponsor, we'll take it.
Just to leave you a 5-star review on iTunes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep. And just to let everybody know, we're coming right back in just a few minutes with the Oklahoma City Thunder season preview. So look out for that. And until next time, thanks for watching and thanks for listening.